Paycor provides payroll and HR software to small and medium businesses. We have over 40,000 clients in a variety of industries, and from recruiting and onboarding to benefits and payroll, our clients want to make an impact in their organization, and we help them do that. We're a fast-growing company, and we have plans to grow even faster, and to accomplish that, it's critical that we are always focused on improving sales productivity, and GeoPoint helps us do just that.
GeoPoint is an amazing tool that's helped us to be more productive in the field. It's helped us to increase the number of prospects that we're getting in front of, and it's just amazing technology that helps us be more prepared in the field. My team absolutely loves using GeoPoint. It saved them a tremendous amount of time, and so we've seen almost 2.5 more drops per week when we're using GeoPoint.
I use GeoPoint on my mobile app on an almost daily basis. It actually is very strategic in the ability to optimize a specific route and get through that route in the most efficient way possible. It allows me to visualize my geographic territory, see where the concentration of my prospect accounts are, and know where I'm going to spend the majority of my time so that I'm actually able to hit a much higher level of accounts that I would not otherwise be able to hit. Because of its integration with Salesforce, I'm able to click directly into the opportunity that I'm working on and add notes, add the visit, and log the drop that I may have done to that location. GeoPoint is an integral part of our sales process, and the utilization of it across our sales team is really impactful in us being such a successful organization.
As a territory analyst, I help create and equalize everybody's territories within their separate regions. It's really important to have GeoPoint so that we can manage the data so that our sales leaders can focus on managing their people.
GeoPoint has been a big win for our sales organization. When we were evaluating a mapping solution, we looked at a couple of different options, and ultimately we selected GeoPoint. These days, users are looking for intuitive, easy-to-use technology, and GeoPoint is just that. If you have sellers who are out in the field, GeoPoint is a no-brainer. It really helps them be more productive, maximize their time, and make sure that they're optimizing their client visits while they're out in the field.
We were just a bunch of nerdy kids who ignored the haters. We took their ridicule and we built on it. And when some of us gave up, well, we built on that too. Built resilience, built on a mission to make things a little better every day until the users came. Then the haters were VCs who scoffed at our audacity. This just isn't the way things are done. But we kept building. Users turned into teams, turned into companies, running their entire businesses on our apps. Then the software giants came after us. We weren't proven, we weren't fully featured, our radical cloud model wasn't secure. But we built on. And today, as companies adopt the cloud to move faster, teams are finding themselves slowed down by each other's efforts. The skeptics are claiming we'll never develop innovation at scale. But now, DevOps have come to the cloud, ushering in a new era of transformation. Companies can release on demand across hundreds of environments, innovating faster with fewer conflicts and fewer disruptions. There will always be challenges. There will always be naysayers. And we'll build on.
My session is getting started with Einstein Analytics. So I put in the chat a link to my blog where I've already uploaded the slides for this presentation, and a link if you wanted to create your own dev org. It might be a little bit close to the time to be able to create your own dev org, but definitely go ahead and do it. Get your hands in there, play around, and really get into what I'm going to show you today, whether you do it now or you do it at home. But you can always ask me questions if you have them, either through my blog or Twitter. And that is me. I am a Salesforce MVP Analytics champion. You can find me on Twitter at JMWagner or LinkedIn_JMWagner if you use LinkedIn. I am a terrible LinkedIn user, so that's probably the last place I'm going to respond to, and I'm very sorry. So to get started, really quick agenda. We're not going to spend a lot of time tonight talking about the Dataflow Editor. A couple of reasons for that. One, I really don't like it. That doesn't mean that I avoid it at all costs, but I wanted to focus a little bit more on the designer layer tonight and how we get started with recipes in the designer layer. And the other thing is, there was a great talk earlier today on the Dataflow Editor. I would definitely check that out with Jen Shear and Satyani. Also, it's changing for summer 20. It's going to look more like Flow than it looked like before. So I didn't want to get too worked up about the Dataflow Editor with it being completely different in summer 20. So if you have a GS0 org and I'm taking a peek at that, it's pretty cool. Looks like Flow. So we are going to work with data, but through the recipe, and then we're going to do some dashboard design. So one of the things I think is really important when it comes to Einstein Analytics is that if you've grown up in Salesforce core like I have, and you are so used to working with reports and dashboards, I feel like this quick 2-second tour of terminology is really important. So when we talk about a data set or a data flow, we're really talking about a report type. So think of either custom report types or standard report types where you have your joins. It's thinking through that process. That's exactly what it is. It's creating those joins in your data. When we think of a lens, and we talk about a lens in Einstein Analytics, that's really a report. It's not that fancy. Lens means report. It gets even easier when a dashboard just means a dashboard. So a little bit different to Salesforce core. You can't click through the dashboard to get to the underlying data that is back in your org, but there are different dashboards that you can create where you can see the underlying data, and I will show you what that looks like. And very easily, an app is just a folder. So a place to store all of your dashboards. So I'm going to move over to Salesforce because this is where the magic happens. To get into Analytics, if you haven't done this before, just easily click on your app launcher and click on Analytics Studio. I'll be really honest, I've had a couple of issues in my org tonight. I don't know why, but I have 1,000 dashboards in here. So if anything goes wonky, I think we're good there from that perspective. So I just wanted to kind of give that little warning up front. So the first thing we're going to do when we get started is we're going to create an app. And if you remember, the app is just your folder. So right here on create, I'm just going to go ahead and click create and click an app. I can click from a template, and there's a number of templates you can use there for apps. Like there's like a sales analytics app. There's a number of those. They're quite long and drawn out, and there's a number of steps that you need to do to complete those to get those set up. I'm going to actually take a little bit easier route tonight and create a blank app. And we're just going to call this, just make up something. I'm a big fan of testing, so virtual test. And go ahead and click create. My app is a little bit lonely. I have a couple little things to do here. So we're going to go ahead and make sure that we do that. And what that next piece that we're going to do is create our recipes. So if I click here, it's going to bring me out back to my main home page. And I can't see your faces like I would normally do in a conference. So I'm hoping you're all nodding along with me, or maybe you've fallen asleep. I'm not quite sure, but I'm going to just go with your nodding along with me. And we're going to go into the data manager. So a lot of great things happen in the data manager. Up at the top, you see a monitor. You can see I've had a couple of different recipes run. If one wasn't successful, you would see a message as to why. So you can see the different jobs here. Whenever I create something, I'm constantly refreshing in here to see what the progress is and making sure that nothing has failed. So we are actually going to maneuver over to data flows and recipes. And we have recipe here. So I have a number of recipes I've already created. So I can create a recipe from here by simply clicking create recipe, or I can also go into my data, which is just right here on the left. And again, I have a number of different data sets here that I can use. I am going to actually go through, like I said, I have a number of these. So I'm actually going to use, I'm going to use this BT testing one. And I'm going to go ahead from here. You have that little drop down. I can do a number of things here, but I'm going to go ahead and click create recipe. I'm going to give it a name. Virtual test. I want to keep everything consistent. You don't have to. It's just my thing, especially because I have so much data in here. So this brings you into your recipe. So when I said I didn't like sitting in the Dataflow editor, I really don't, but I really do like the recipe. There's a number of different things you can do here. Since we're only doing this one dashboard, I'm going to make changes to my data in here. And one of those things that I can change are like column labels, etc. So looking here, we could see under the preview, we have a number of columns here we can look at. And we could see all these different columns. If we want to click on one of them, we can easily click on them. And you can see here the profile information for opportunity type. You can see it has 707 values, 7 are missing. You can see a breakdown of that information, super helpful. You can actually change the names of the columns from here. There's a number of different things you can do that makes things a lot easier. So I'm actually going to back out of this one because I wanted to give you kind of just that sense of what that looked like. And I'm going to go back into the Dataflow recipe to start from scratch, see what that looks like. I like doing things multiple ways. So from here, again, I click that create recipe. It's going to give me a number of different data sets I can use again. And I am going to use this opportunities one. And virtual dream test, because I noticed the other one already had the fields I wanted created, so I didn't want to use that. So again, in my recipe, we can look at our columns. One of the things I wanted to show you is you have the preview. You also have columns here. I don't spend a lot of time. I'm not really a big fan of this view. There's a number, I guess, a number of different things you could do here, but I prefer to look at my data. I want to be able to kind of have a glance at it, take a peek, see what it is that I want to look at. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to want to do in here. And the reason I'm going to make some changes in here is I want to make this easier for when I create my dashboards. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the right. I believe there's 27 columns in here. And I have an amount field, an amount column here. So if I click on that, I can get a little bit of information. It says I can change it to a dimension. I'm going to leave it as a measure because we do want to sum this. I can also click here and look at the attributes. So here's the API name, here's the field label. If I wanted to change this to, I don't know, opti amount instead, I could easily make that change there. And a good example here is this account.owner ID. I can change the name of that column. If you want to make sure that you standardize the way this looks, I would recommend you doing it in the XMD as opposed to doing each one individually in the recipe. But again, we're going to try to stay away from some of the codey bits tonight, and that's a technical term, and stay in the recipe. We're just getting started, don't want to get too crazy. So looking at the amount here, one of the things that I can do if I click on this down arrow is I can hide the column, I can show it, I can change it to a dimension, etc. What I'm going to do is create a bucket. So when I'm thinking through the dashboard, I want to actually be able to sum my dashboards and have a column where I can identify big deals versus small deals. So this is giving me a range because it's a measure. And I'm going to say that any deal up to 300,000 is going to be a small deal. And automatically it puts the 300,000 in as greater than or equal to, I'm going to just give that a name as large deal. Try to keep it pretty simple for 10 o'clock at night. And I'm going to go ahead and click add. And it's giving me a whole new column here. See, it's highlighted and you can click on that. I'm going to go to profile, make sure all my values were captured. Absolutely. Large deal, small deal, looks good. What doesn't look good is that column name. So I am going to change just the field name. I'm not going to change the API name. I'm just going to change that to deal size. So once I click off of that, it automatically changes. So for those of us, like I said, who have grown up in Salesforce and like being able to click save and see how easily things manipulate, this works really well for me. But I still have my amount column here and I have deal size. So the next piece I want to look at is, I'm going to scroll over to the left, and opportunity type is really important to me, something I really need. I'm going to look at stage though. I have a lot of stages, and if I click on that profile again, these are the list of all of my stages. I have quite a number of stages, and I feel like I don't probably need all of these in terms of reporting. It's not going to give me the most accurate snapshot that I want for these particular dashboards. So again, we're going to hit that down arrow. And because this is not a measure, we're getting a whole lot more options on this particular menu, right? We could change it to a date, a measure. There's a number of things we could format dates. It's not a date, so it's fine. But we're gonna, again, go back and bucket, and we're gonna create a number of buckets. And this is kind of tedious, a little bit boring, but just kind of giving you a feel of what it looks like. So if you do have access to the slides and you're following along, we're gonna create 5 buckets here, and I'm gonna create one for prospecting. And that's pretty easy because I'm just, if you look off to the side here, we've got prospecting. So that's pretty easy. I'm just gonna type in here, prospecting. The one thing I'll caution is that this is case sensitive, and it's sensitive to spaces, spelling, everything else. So just be really careful. One of the things that I will do sometimes is just kind of copy and paste because I could be a little lazy that way. I'm going to hit the plus sign, and it's going to give me another bucket. I'm going to change this, and I'm putting a number at the front just to kind of give it a sort. And I think I totally spelled that wrong. So see here, this is me being lazy. I'm going to go ahead and put that in, hit my plus arrow. And I'm actually going to skip over to closed one, even though that looks strange, and I'll tell you why in a second. Again, I'm going to just copy that. If we were in person, I'd probably try to tell a bad joke, but I can't see your faces. Again, just gonna type that in there. And the reason why I skipped number 3 is that third bucket is a little bit more tedious. That's proposal. And we're going to basically take, if you look on the side here, needs analysis, value prop, perception analysis, negotiation review, and proposal price quote, and we're going to bucket those into one particular bucket. So this is the part where we're really bucketing. So I'm just going to type those in really quickly. And I was playing around with those earlier, so this is probably the 30th time I've done this today. Again, make sure you have your spaces in. It is that finicky. And then negotiation. Do not put any spaces in between negotiation and review. If you learn nothing from this talk, you will learn to not put any spaces and that this is case sensitive. Okay, I'm all done. I'm going to go ahead and click add. If I'd forgotten any of one of those or I'd spelt it wrong, they wouldn't have bucketed. You'd have been able to see here that they didn't get into a bucket. But now I've taken all the stages and bucketed those down into 5. So I think I'm done here. Maybe I'll take a peek at this. Go here and change that to account source because that looks terrible. Easy peasy. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Save Recipe. And you'll see that the recipe was successfully saved. And then I'm going to create my data set. So now in my creation of data set, you'll see that I have 27 fields. 25 are opportunity fields, 2 are derived fields. Here's my data set name. I'm going to save it to my private app right now. I'm not going to apply any security predicates. That's a much longer conversation about who gets to see and interact with what. Very similar to talking about Salesforce, and it's talking about security in Salesforce, just a little bit more complicated. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. I'm only going to run it this one time, and I'm going to click run recipe. And if you recall, we talked about that monitor. So if I go ahead and click back to data manager and click monitor, you can see that this is running. I can use this little arrow. I can hit the refresh. It's queued. It's probably annoyed at me because I'm going to keep hitting refresh. It's back to running. And while it's doing that, I'm actually going to, now you're seeing what's going on over there. I'm going to go back to Analytics Studio, and it does create all of these tabs at the top of your screen. So that's always fun. So now that we've created our recipe, it's time to actually do some really fun stuff. We're going to actually create a dashboard. Just going to check on my Dataflow, making sure this is done. It's moving slowly. Okay, so I'm going to go back here onto my home page. I'm actually going to hit create, and from here we're going to create that dashboard. So if you recall, when we did the app, we said we were going to click on the blank dashboard. At this point, we're going to actually use one from a template. So one of the reasons why I like using a template is somebody's already done the hard work of doing a lot of those designs, putting the colors in, making them look really nice. So, and because of that, it's just much easier to sometimes modify those. And I think that's a great way to get started. So there's a number of different templates that you can choose here. I'm going to actually choose this table expansion one. I like this one. It shows how metrics change over time. I'm really big on trend analysis and seeing how things change from month to month, quarter to quarter. So I'm going to actually use that one. I know from my email that my data set is done running. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue. This gives me the option to personalize my table expansion. So I can go in here and select the data set that I want. This is the one that I just created. And then I'm going to choose my dimensions. So if you think about it, these are the things that you want to be able to report on. So I'm going to go in here and choose a number of different items. I'm going to look at, let's see here. I'm going to look at deal size. I'm going to look at lead source, name. I'm going to look at the stage. I think I made stage textbook. I forgot to change the name of it. Good job. And we'll just see what else we have here. I have 4. And I am going to choose, and you get to play around with these, right? You can make tons of these, and it's great to be able to see, you know, what kind of data you're working with. So I'm actually going to choose, the one I'm going to choose is not here. Okay, perfect. So once I do that, I am then going to choose my measure, which it's amount, and then date. So we're only seeing amount. That was the only measure in the recipe that we had. And then for here, for date, close date is way more important on an opportunity than create a date. So here I'm going to click looks good. I'm going to give it a name. And I'm going to select the app. I'm going to leave it in my private app for now. I'm working on that. I'm going to go ahead and click create. So now it's created a dashboard for me. It's great. It's in dark mode. It's all the colors that I like. It's perfect. I'm done. Not so much, because none of these really make sense to me. So this doesn't really make sense. This doesn't make sense. And this is probably not enough information for me. So this is where we get to actually start modifying our charts. There's a couple of ways you can do this. So if I were to create a new one, I can always drop from here into, just like drag it in. But we don't have to. We're going to modify some of these. And if you click here, you can see the different properties for this widget, and we'll go over that a little bit more. Here's the query editor. You can also go through here and some of the items, but I'm going to do, again, the path of least resistance. Just double click. I double click in, and now I can edit my bar chart. So one of the things that I'm looking at is I'm really wanting to focus on a specific time period. 2020 has some additional data in there that I added in, but not a whole lot. So DevOrgs with their old data. But what I'm going to do is actually change this so that the close date is actually, we're going to look at year, month. You're going to see some actual additional bars come up there. And then we still want sum of amount. Perfect. We're going to add one more, and we're going to do the count. So now we're doing that for a reason, because we're going to actually do a compare table. So what this means is we're going to be able to look and compare the change from month to month. So now that I have my extra bars here, probably doesn't look as great as we'd want it to. I'm going to go up here. We can leave it in chart mode, or we can move this to table mode. this is how you would get into the SQL query mode. We're going to stay away from that for tonight. We're going to go into table mode, and this actually gives you 3 different options. You can do a values table, compare, or a pivot. So I'm pretty sure I don't have to talk to anybody about a pivot. The compare is where we're going to look at the change, like say month over month, and values if you want to just look at, say, like a list of all the opportunities and all the details behind it. But we're going to actually select compare table. So now we can see our close date, year, month, the sum of the amount, and then the count of the rows. Probably looks like it's not going to give me a whole lot of information at this point, but we're going to work with that. So on the count of rows, this is the one that we're going to adjust to show the difference between our month on month. We're going to hit that little down arrow, and another menu pops up. One of the things I'll show you when I was getting ready to, when I started working with Einstein, is that you can click inside here to change the measure, but then you can also click here to have another list of options. The amount of times I've clicked back and forth in both places, a lot. So from here, we want to actually edit this column. And once we edit the column, it's going to let us change the name of it. So count of rows is not exactly the column name that we want here. We're going to do POP for period over period. So that's going to change the name of the column. From here, if we wanted to build a formula in, we absolutely can. And there's some pre-built formulas here that we can use. I'm going to use the period over period. And it's going to automatically look at column A, the sum of amount, and compare it month over month and calculate the change as a percent. And this is the format it's going to use. You can always change the format if you wanted to, or change it from not a percentage. So I'm going to go ahead and click apply here. It's going to go and change my column for me. I'm going to close this column editor here. This is not exactly something that we're going to be able to put onto our dashboard, not exactly handy here. But one of the things that I like about Einstein is we have a couple of different options here. And I'm going to click on charts. And here are all the different charts that come with Einstein. However, it also has some suggested charts. So in suggested charts, I could see where there's 2 bar charts here. There's a scatter plot. I'm actually going to choose this. This is going to show me a trend line. It looks a little funky because of the extra data in here, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and click update, and I'll show you how we can use formulas there. Not exactly the look we're going for. So I'm going to actually step back in there for a quick second, and I'm going to add a filter. So we here are looking at the data. Here I'm going to click on filter, and I can easily add a filter in here. I'm going to put a filter on close date. I'm going to do a custom one because we're not really in 2017. And I'm going to change this to August 2018. So we're just looking at, no, I'm doing 2019. So we're just looking at the year time frame, 2 years there. That's going to make our data look a little bit neater. I'm going to go ahead and update that. And now we could see that we could see the trend lines on this chart. So you can see the differences month over month. Now, what I also want to do is add a label to this, right? So my display label here is close date, day 3. This is not exactly what we want. So I'm going to give this actually a title. So again, to do that, I just clicked one click, and I'm on the widget properties here. I'm going to give it a title. I'm going to say opportunity period over period. And you can see that it automatically appears there. I can change the font size of that if I wanted to make it bigger, if I wanted to make it smaller. I think probably 14 was the best for visibility. I could change the chart type there if I want to. The theme is dark. I'm going to leave it dark. And I can make any changes here, and we'll go through a couple of those. So we now have modified our first chart. Now I want to make some more changes here. The one thing is that this is great. I like this information, except I just want to like drag it down. So if I click on it, I could actually just drag that, give myself a little bit more real estate. I'm going to drag this down as well. And now I have a space up at the top. Just drag it down just a tiny bit more. So now I have the opportunity to kind of look at these donut charts that I have here. And I'm just gonna expand them a little bit, kind of take a peek, see if this really works for me. This was the deal size one that I had. Not really a fan of this one. I don't really feel like this is doing a whole lot for me. So what I'm gonna do is just double click here and some amount, that's great. I'm gonna actually click inside of deal size and I'm gonna change that. I'm gonna actually change that to lead source. So now I can see where all the leads came in from, and it's a donut chart. Let me update that, see how I feel about that. Looks pretty good. It's probably a few too many options for a donut chart, but we're gonna leave it like that for now. It kind of matches the one at the bottom. So maybe that's not the one I wanted. Maybe I want to kind of just play with this a little bit. And that's the thing, right? Is that you don't really lose anything by making some changes to it. So just kind of looking here, you know, what makes the most sense for you? What type of data are you trying to pull in? So, you know, maybe it's account source and you can kind of take a peek here what that looks like. Very similar. I can go ahead and click update. Again, if I want to make any changes, I just click once, come over here to the editor. This is not exactly the best title. So maybe I want to call it account source. With a donut chart, you can also change a few things. Well, with any chart, you could change the title alignment. We have it left here. We can move it center. But if we scroll down under donut chart, we can actually change, we could show the value and the title. There's a number of things you could do. One of the things that I like to do is with the legend, I'll usually show it inside the chart area. So I'm able to get a little bit more real estate there so you could see it better. Gonna do something a little bit different on the lead source mix. We're gonna change that. We're gonna make that into our stage bucket. We'll change the name of that. We're also going to change the type of chart that it is. Let's look at the suggested charts. I feel like this would be great as a funnel. So let's go ahead and select that. Click update. And again, it's made a nice funnel, except it's called lead source mix. So let's change that to opti stages. And again, these are the ones that we created in our recipe. So they're actually sorted for you already. So we have our opti stages. I feel like that looks good. I'm gonna leave it and drag this down a little bit so you can see kind of a better view. Make this a little smaller. Definitely go ahead and play around with that. So we've got some space here. We want to create a new one. Okay, so I want to make sure that we have enough time. So I'm just going to show quickly a couple of things. If I wanted, yeah.
Hi, Nikhil here. So we have remaining 7 minutes. So
yeah.
I think we have some question answers as well. So let's plan accordingly.
Yes. So one of the things that I did, and if you do follow along the slides, there's a lot more information that we could do. But if you were to create your own chart, you would just very simply drag it out here. Again, click and do the same things that we did before. You would just have to start from scratch. So if you were to add in, say, like the name of the opportunity, you can go ahead and do that. You know, maybe you want to change this to the sum by amount. And then you can also use this very similar to like Excel. You could sort descending. Go ahead and click done. The one thing I will say about this is that it doesn't match the rest of the dashboard, so you end up having to make some adjustments. Again, click here and you can change the theme. The last thing I wanted to show you very quickly is something here like revenue. If I wanted to make, say, a revenue year to date, instead of creating this from scratch again, I can click here and I can I can copy the widget. It's gonna put it all the way at the bottom, so you just have to hit shift and drag it up. It just plopped it right there. And then you could throw a filter on it, but a lot of the things that I like to show are some tips and tricks that you don't always have to recreate things from scratch. You can absolutely use some of these copy paste, you know, kind of go in here, make any changes that you need to, because the formatting and the design is already done for you. So it's a really quick way to kind of, you know, go from like having pretty much no dashboards built to some really great dashboards. So if you go to my blog where I posted all the slides, there's a couple more exercises that we were going to do, but time just went so fast with everybody. So happy to answer some questions.
Great.
The equivalent of a recipe in a reporting world. It's probably not the same, like if you're thinking of in terms of Salesforce reports and dashboards. And the reason why I say that is because what we didn't show in getting started in the recipe is you could also add like a CSV, or you could add additional data. So I would say this is a step above what you could do in reports and dashboards. The next question, when to use Einstein Analytics and when to use normal reporting? That's a great question, and I get that one a lot. So with Summer 20, you're going to actually be able to take a Salesforce report and bring it into EA and do like trend analysis on there. So that line is going to blur a lot more. The way I usually look at it is with normal Salesforce reporting, it's great for operational reporting, day-to-day type of thing. If you want to start doing trend analysis, instead of having to build out snapshot reports, you can do a lot of that, as well as join it with other data sources like a Redshift, you know, bringing data in from AWS, Heroku, any other systems, Snowflake. So this is really more of a BI tool as opposed to just your operational reports and dashboards. The next one is Einstein Analytics reports and charts and communities. Yes, you can. That's pretty new. What would be my advice for people from other analytics tools? Oh, that's a good one. I used business objects back in the day and then stepped away from analytics for a long time and came back in. I think it's a great question. I'm probably going to have to look into that one a little bit for you, if that helps, Mohandas. What is the prospect of a person from other tools when compared to a person from SF scaling up into Einstein Analytics? So with analytics, what a measure is how you look at data. If you're coming from another tool, like if you're coming from a Power BI, you're coming from a Tableau, the concepts in terms of how you look at data are really the same. It's just how you manipulate it in that tool. So I think if you have a data background, that makes things a lot easier for you. I don't know what the roadmap is for people from other business intelligence tools. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that one, but there's, at the end of my slides, there's a ton of resources for you. Please, please, please look at those. ETL knowledge is not needed for Einstein Analytics. Okay. Is a recipe a data extract from Salesforce data or some external source? The recipe is a way of manipulating the data from Salesforce or another external source, as well as joining another data source to it. So like I said before, you can have a recipe join a CSV file as well as bringing in data from other, like say a data warehouse. So it's a way to manipulate the data that you bring in. The data flow is where you actually join it together. Okay. Let's see here. How many charts can be added to one dashboard? So, and when you talk about adding charts to dashboards, you want to look at what makes the most sense. We didn't step into too much because my time went so fast today. We didn't step into too much about pages. So up at the top here, you have pages. So you want to make sure you're not doing too many dashboard widgets because of performance, right? It's having to kind of go through all of that data. And you also want to keep them clean and neat. I would just have a handful, like we have here, like about 5 or 6, and then just start to use pages. We didn't even get into faceting. Gosh, this time went so fast. So I think that one works. Let's see. Roadmap for Einstein Analytics. So at this point in time, as much as I know, the two, Einstein and Tableau, are going to coexist together peacefully. Tableau does have a lot of features that EA doesn't have, but EA also has the full Einstein component, right? So Tableau doesn't really have the predictive analytics pieces of Einstein that EA has. Typical duration of an Einstein project. Oof. I think I've seen weeks and I've seen years. I think it just depends on how much data you're working with, because think about, this is like big data stuff. So it can really range. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish.
We'll take a couple of more questions, Judy.
Okay. So there's a question, let's see, how long would it take someone who has used tools to be proficient in Einstein? Like I said, if you've already got the data background, it won't take long to learn it. And there's a number of, the ACE team that runs all of that training and stuff, they're really good. They have a lot of resources. They're always churning out resources. And I have some links to resources. There's Salesforce Blogger, which is a great site. Let's see, can we schedule dynamic dashboards? Yes, you can. I didn't get to it, but there's definitely something on that. Do I think EA and Tableau are going to merge or stay separate? I think right now, as far as we know, they're just going to kind of be like brother and sister. Let's see. Customized report, is JSON knowledge required? It helps. Is it required? No. When I first did the initial, if anybody remembers back in the brown belt, green belt stages of when it was Wave, it was all in JSON, and it's not anymore, which is pretty great. And it's getting easier and better with each release. They're spending a lot of time on making sure that things sort of align more to Salesforce.
Great.
So
I think, Judy, we have to stop here. Guys,
okay.
You can connect with Judy on LinkedIn and Twitter, and you can ask all your questions over there.